Welcome to the Inside Silverstone podcast, a business podcast covering all things tech, engineering, innovation and motorsport. Hosted by me, Chris Broome.
And me, Fiona Pawley. This is a series of unscripted conversations with leading business owners and high-tech talent, talking about their experiences within the Silverstone and motorsport business communities. Welcome to this episode of Inside Silverstone, a business podcast discussing all things high-tech, engineering and motorsport. My name is Fiona Pawley and I'm going to be your host for the next conversation. Now we have got a very special guest with us today. Let me introduce Darren Cox, the CEO of DCC+Co. Welcome to Inside Silverstone, Darren. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Fiona. It's lovely to be here.
So you and I have been crossing paths for a while in the motorsport arena. Do you want to tell our listeners who you are and where you've come from?
Well, that could take up the whole podcast, of course. I'll try and keep it short. But I joined the motor industry, I guess, straight out of university. My first ever job in the motor industry was collecting money off people who had defaulted on their car loans. So without decrying the finance industry within the motor industry, who do a brilliant job, of course, pretty lowest of the low, really, phoning people up and asking them for money. And I've had an amazing apprenticeship since then. I'm now 49, so I've been in and around the industry around 30 years and done lots of stuff. I was in automotive for a long time with the Renault Nissan group, ended up being the global motorsport director based out of Japan, and did everything in between. Worked in Europe for a while, was a brand manager, did marketing, did sales, did financing, did franchising, but all the way through always wanted to work in the motorsport industry, and really got myself to a position where I was working on motorsport projects within my day-to-day roles. So that's me, really. Always been interested in cars and the motorsport industry. My dad was in the industry in various different guises. My brother's currently at Red Bull. So it's a family thing, really. And I've not only done various things within automotive and motorsport, but had various roles, from a collection agent all the way through to, as you say, CEO. I've run a publicly traded company in Canada, been an entrepreneur, set up some businesses. So yeah, had a pretty varied career, and find myself being very lucky, to be quite honest, to be able to do all the things that I've done, which we'll touch on a few of them, I'm sure, during this next half an hour or so.
Absolutely. And, I think talking about where we start from and, kind of negotiating with those people and doing that debt collection, I can imagine you picked up quite a few kind of negotiation skills from that point, and navigating commercial worlds and corporate worlds and running your own businesses. It's a complex canvas of skills and talent. Tell us, when you were at Nissan, you ended up being motorsport director and, was the head of marketing and working in those kind of marketing programs. What was it about being in that space that you most enjoyed?
It's funny because, as we'll touch on in a minute, there's a big sort of exclamation mark over that period of my life. I mean, I left Nissan now 8 years ago, but I still reflect on it because of something we're going to talk about in a moment. I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. I mean, it goes back to, people tell me they hated school. I used to love going to school, and as much as we moan about going to work, whatever I was doing, whether it was collecting money or running a motorsport program, I always found some way of enjoying it. And I think, I've got two daughters who are at university at the moment. And when they ask me for advice, I say, find something you enjoy doing. It's just as simple as that, because it does feel, of course, it's hard going to work every day if you don't enjoy what you're doing. And not every day is brilliant. But I always managed to find myself doing something that was either providing me progress within my career or allowed me to enjoy what I was doing. And it wasn't just motorsport. I came up with the sponsorship strategy for Nissan called Nissan Sports Adventure around the same time that Red Bull were doing all of their activities within the adventure sport world with their, athlete team. We had an athlete team.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were throwing people off of mountains and out of, aircraft and that sort of thing. And that was fascinating. It wasn't my world. I didn't know it, but it was we came up with this, we started with the objectives, came up with the strategy, and then delivered the tactics. And I didn't know the space, I wasn't a sponsorship expert, I wasn't an events expert, but I knew that you needed some sort of vision, and then you needed to get into the nuts and bolts of delivering it in the best way possible, and we did that. So, yeah, from also redesigning the whole of Nissan's web presence in 2000 and something, when no one really wanted to do the web job because no one really knew about it. It was like they were looking around and spotted me, probably on social media or something. Well, he must know about it. So I ended up doing that. So yeah, it's been a smorgasbord of a career, but with that sort of vein through it of motorsport performance vehicles that continues to this day.
Yeah, and I think, going back to what you said just right at the top, doing something that you're interested in or that you enjoy, or making it fun and making work fun. I think particularly for, younger people, kind of coming out of education and, what do I need to do? What do I want to do? I mean, you clearly have had quite a varied career and lots of different kind of spaces, as well as, there being a red thread, whether it's cars or sport generally. But I think, the people coming out of university or even coming out of school, today, they're not going to have one career. They're not going to have one job. It's not linear anymore. It is about that. Oh, there's an opportunity over there. I don't know everything about it, but I'm curious enough to go, oh, I'm going to give it a go and maybe fail.
That's funny. That's funny you say that. The title of my book that I'll never write is called "Fail to Win." And it is because I've done a lot of stuff that didn't work, but I learned from it, or I felt I learned from it, and certainly the teams around me learned from what not to do the next time.
Yeah.
And that wasn't as prevalent a thought 10, 15 years ago as it is now. Elon Musk almost has sort of trademarked that, with blowing up SpaceX vehicles and stuff like that, and celebrating them blowing up.
Yeah.
But 15 years ago, when we were trying this stuff out, that wasn't, you didn't have a book to say, how do you turn a gamer into a racing driver, or how do you use adventure sports, which wasn't a big thing back then, as part of your marketing strategy as a car company. There wasn't a book to do it. But it's interesting you were saying about it, and I think one of the things I know you want to talk about is COVID and the impact on business in general. I mean, I see a massive impact on young people that are coming into the workplace, especially with the work from home push that a number of people and businesses had. My last business, I almost wore it as a badge of honor that I didn't have to go into the office. I'm now doing different things. I'm consulting with different groups, and I absolutely love being back in the office. And the company I'm doing most of the work with at the moment has a very, very young group of people. It's effectively, a startup in terms of its structure. And I see the benefit that the young people get from the more senior people in the business that have been there, done it, got the T-shirt. And you just wouldn't have got that from the work from home environment. It was very comfortable, and you could get your washing done ahead of the weekend, and you made sure that your deliveries were all organised, but
thrown behind the bins or whatever.
Exactly. But you weren't as an individual, and I would say even myself, I wasn't learning. Right, I was stagnating.
Yeah.
I saw a brilliant interview of Barack Obama the other day, and he said, what would be the one piece of advice? So I'd rather listen to Barack Obama's advice rather than mine. And his one piece of advice for people starting their careers was learn how to get things done. He says he's heard a lot of people that can talk about how something went wrong, or how to do something better, or what should be done in the future, or a strategy. And he said, the people I'm most impressed with in my career in business or in politics is the people that have the ability to do things and get things done. And I've got to say, if you look around our industry, our main industry, Fiona, that we sort of know each other from, is motorsport. That's you have to do it, right? The green light goes green at the end of the pit lane at a certain time. It ain't waiting for you. to get something done, or
get your
to
homework
files
finished.
done. Exactly.
Yeah.
You just have to do it. And, that piece of car that's, being built in a factory that needs to be in a place, tomorrow, it has to get there. So someone either has to put it on a plane or someone has to drive it there, just get stuff done. So yeah, it's been an amazing learning experience for me. But I would say those are the two pieces of advice that I would say, enjoy it. 3 pieces of advice, really. Enjoy what you do. Don't worry about failing. Just move on quickly and learn from it.
Yeah.
And the Barack Obama, just work on how to get things done and not just pontificate or speculate. And that's definitely the thing I've learned from motorsport the most, which is that last one.
Yeah, I mean, so for our viewers and our audience members, Darren and I met in GT racing, and I was in the organisers camp, if you like. We were the government with Stefan Rattel organisation and Motorsports Group, and you were one of our customers and one of the clients, and again, kind of having people in those smaller organisations. Obviously, you worked for a big corporate, but Stefan's company was very small at the time. He had a lot of big vision, and he would write stuff on the back of a post-it note and go, right, this is what we need to do, and then go and do it. And there was a lot of freedom in that kind of doing it. But you do have to have the visionary, the person who goes, okay, this could be a good idea, and have the confidence to step forward into it. And I would love to know where the germ seed of how are we going to take kids gaming from their bedrooms onto the racetrack. And I'm talking about the Nissan GT Academy, which many of our listeners will know. There's a movie coming out tomorrow. The big release is tomorrow for the Gran Turismo movie. What planted that idea to think, oh, this might be a good idea?
Yes. And I haven't told the story for a while, so thank you for asking, because it will refresh my my memory. But I think the biggest thing that I've realized, I'll go back to how I came up with the idea. The biggest thing I've realized is, and I didn't think at the time, because you're younger, you're more confident in yourself and your own abilities. I was very lucky to have the right people around me and above me in this to make that happen. And I say, the book I'm never going to write, I've actually written half of it. Whether I'll finish it or not, I don't know. But when you're writing it, you think, hang on a minute, it's a voyage of self-discovery. That if that hadn't have happened with that person, and actually, it's funny enough, it actually boils down to one person that was my mentor through the whole of my career at Nissan. I never realised it. He was just sort of, helping me out. He never told me what to do. He just sort of gave me advice, and most of the time I didn't take it, of course. But when I did, it was a good thing. And the ability to allow me to come up with the idea was actually, he was our marketing director at the time in the UK, and he was very brand focused. And everyone knows being brand led is important, but no one wants to do it. It's because you're always chasing the next month, the next quarter, whatever it might be, and building a brand by definition takes years and years and years. So most people, like, if you look at my CV, I've moved, every 2 or 3 years, I've gone and done something else, whether it be internally at a company or building my own companies. So it is difficult to build a brand. But this guy called Paul Wilcox, who's currently, I think his title is president of Stellantis in the UK. He told us all that we needed to build this Nissan brand, that we absolutely needed to live to our brand values, which at the time was about innovation. And and he let us push the boundaries, and he did for the next 10 years when I worked in, for him and around him. But I was at Bedford Autodrome, which isn't far from where we both sit here now. And I'd come up with this project with PlayStation to give a car away, basically, as a part of a promotional activity. And part of that was we were going to name the car Gran Turismo 4, which was the new game that was coming out. It would be a special edition car, and we would invite these gamers to the racetrack, and the best of the drivers would win the car. Funnily enough, I've just moved something from the background. That's actually amazingly, that's the gear knob of one of those cars. But how random! It's like I've got props. It's like I've got props around.
And for the audience, you did just legitimately remove that from the background. So yeah, there we go.
Because it looks stupid on top of there, but I've got nowhere else to put it. So there we are. But that is actually the gear knob of one of those cars. Anyway, cut a long story short, the challenge to win this car was you had to drive a car fast, you had to drive a 4x4 over obstacles, you had to park a small car, and also go on the gaming rig. And one of the instructors at Bedford said, a couple of these guys can actually drive.
Okay.
So that was the inspiration. I went and had a look at the game times that they were doing on the PlayStation, looked at the times that they were doing on track, and now it's obvious, right? But the guys that were at the top on the track were the same guys that were at the top on the game, and that was the inspiration. So it took 3 years to get that inspiration into a project, and I genuinely remember, one year it was on the cycle of budgets and approvals from Japan, etc. I remember I was driving past Heathrow Airport. Every time I drive past there, I remember the conversation I was having on the phone with my then marketing director when I was in Nissan Europe. And I literally burst into tears because it was so important to me that this thing was going to be massive and it was going to be a really big project, and no one could see the vision. And the no that I got from that particular example of trying to get through the process was, just because someone's good at playing Tiger Woods golf doesn't mean they're going to win the US Masters. And for the listeners that don't know motorsport as intimately as we do, that 18 years ago I came up with the idea. It was inconceivable that being good on a driving game would translate into being good on track. Now we see a huge amount of investment put in by the Formula One teams to simulation, what we call driver in the loop simulation. And right now we're in the middle of a Formula One season, but during a race weekend, there will be a team of people at the factory on the simulator. When the car finishes in real life, all the data will be downloaded, and that team will then start working on that car overnight. They literally will work overnight on the simulator as if they're developing the car, and then they'll send the data back of what they found in terms of upgrades that they could put on the car in terms of suspension settings, tire pressures, everything else, wing angles, etc. And they will be driving the development of the car from effectively a big PlayStation.
Yeah.
And we know that Lando Norris is a gamer and Max is a great gamer. He owns his own gaming team, and he's invested in gaming businesses, etc. But 18 years ago, that was just inconceivable, absolutely inconceivable that link could be made. And here we are, as you say, on the eve of a movie coming out celebrating that point, that we took, in the end, over 20 gamers from their PlayStations. We democratized motorsport, someone called it, might have been me. We went to markets that back then didn't have any motorsport activity. We had specific activations, and we found drivers in countries that didn't have a history of motorsport, such as Thailand, India. We went as far afield as Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, Russia, all across Europe, obviously, America. We eventually got to Japan, obviously very conservative country, but we proved it after about 5 years that it wasn't a bad idea, and they joined in as well. So yeah, it was that small idea, and you'll see it partly in the movie, the difficulties of getting that signed off, but having an innovation spirit within a company is absolutely critical. And having and when I say spirit, I don't mean write it down on a piece of paper and say we're innovative, because a lot of companies do that today. And I think that, Nissan, unfortunately, are in that position. They're not as innovative as they were. But the people at the top of the tree actually believe in it. And say what you like about Carlos Ghosn, and a lot has been said recently. He was the former chief executive of Nissan and Renault. You might have heard about him. He's the one that had to escape Japan in a music box due to some disagreements with the Japanese management. He was the guy that commissioned the first mass-produced electric car. There's no more innovation than that. I remember a press conference he did in Geneva Motor Show, and the way Geneva Motor Show works, it's quite a small motor show, and the press conferences are scheduled so literally the press walk from stand to stand. And Mr. Gone, I don't have to call him Mr. Gone anymore. He basically announced he was betting the farm, i.e. Nissan, on an electric future. Now this is I don't know.
What year is this?
This is 9, 10, I don't know. Can't remember the year.
Long time ago.
Long time ago. We all then, as you do, you then walk to the next press conference, see what they're saying after the conference. And the then chief executive of VW obviously changed his speech. He obviously listened to Carlos's speech and then ad-libbed his speech. And he basically took the mickey out of him and said, "This is, we certainly won't be moving, this electric thing. You on this stand, you'll find cars that have engines in them, not batteries." Now look, Carlos got things done, and he also really allowed people underneath him to be innovative as long as it made sense. And the excuse we used when we pitched to him was he told the whole company that we should not use advertising to sell sports cars. He said, if we do that, then we're dead. So we effectively, with GT Academy, came up with this thing that is now called advertiser-led branding or content, content-led marketing.
Yeah.
Because the excuse we used was we were going to make a TV show out of this crazy idea of taking gamers and turn them into racing drivers. And his push was always on return on investment, and of course in a car company, you've got a lot of engineers. Yeah. They, they're very, tight on process, but also on financial models, and the return on investment one is, baked into them from a young age. So we have to do that as marketeers as well. Now, I'd love, going back there, obviously the first year, it's like, hang on, so you're going to take these gamers and you're going to turn them into racing, make a TV show. So we could then justify, we're going to make a TV show. So Nissan's going to be on screen for a certain amount of time. Have Nissan branding on there. We're going to have, Z and GTRs in the shot. So, if it was a TV ad, we're going to make a 1 hour long TV ad. So you work out the numbers, it works out a good return on investment. But imagine after 10 years of doing that project and quite low budgets. I mean, you saw we didn't spend as much as some of our competitors on track. We made TV shows that went, I think in the end, we were in 110 countries that had that took the TV show in different guises. We won 3 Cannes Lions, I think. We won Autosport Innovation Awards. So the return on investment must have been huge in terms of both media and PR. And now Nissan aren't putting any money to a film, and you've got allegedly 200 million being spent on the production and promotion of a movie. So there is no other motorsport program ever that has delivered a higher return on investment. And that was from one crazy idea, and me being allowed as you called it visionary, I wouldn't call it visionary, as a rebel, let's call it a rebel, to allow me to go and see if this thing would work. Yeah. That's a very unusual environment that you'd find within the car company. And I think these days it's not like that at all in the big companies. I think it's very, I'm looking from the outside in now. I think it's very difficult to innovate in that space. And it's a shame, because look at what, again, Elon Musk has done. He caught the main players in the industry on the hop. Absolutely did. And that's because they believed in their model and kept pushing their model and didn't innovate and didn't look and didn't believe in this upstart that could challenge what they've been doing for over 100 years.
I think, fascinating kind of story and journey. And, I'm really enjoying the fact that you're having a time to reflect on this, because I think when I am working with, either my clients on coaching or training, actually it's in the reflection of, what have we done? How are we doing it? What's worked before, that then you can start going, oh, right. Okay. Actually, that mentoring that I had from this person that I didn't even realize was happening gave me, a good anchor. The vision and the values were clear from the business, like, build the brand. Like it was, you had those foundation points in order to enable you to run wild and be a bit of a rebel. And I think that with big corporates, it's a lot harder. Like, I do not underestimate the amount of arguing you probably did over the years to get it over the line, and the amount of cold, no, we don't do it that way. We don't, we've always done it this way is my least favorite sentence for business. You know, it kind of, as soon as I hear that phrase, I'm like, right, let's rip it up. Let's do something else.
I think there's a great example in two areas, and one of them I'll try and bring back to sort of where our audience is. But look at the Williams story. Fantastically successful. Williams Formula One, I'm talking about, fantastically successful, ran by Frank Williams and Patrick Head, and then they obviously got to an age, and with Frank's injuries and stuff, that they weren't hands-on in charge. The DNA wasn't there anymore. But everyone had the excuse of, well, Frank wouldn't have done it like that. We've always done, to use your phrase, we've always done it like that. And the new team principal has just come out in the last few months and said, we're 20 years behind. He came from Mercedes F1, and he said, we're 20 years behind. And the reason they're 20 years behind is that, well, Frank always did it like that. Frank wouldn't have been doing it like that if he was 40 years of age at the cutting edge. They were still wanting to do it like they did when they were winning world championships in the 90s, and it's moved on. And it's taken a guy that's come from Mercedes to say, we don't do it like that anymore. That's not how you win in Formula One. And of course we respect the Frank era and everything he did to build this amazing business up, but that's not going to work. So there's a great example there. I'll give you another example is at Silverstone. The way both the circuit has adapted, circuit has had to commercialize, and what that has meant to the circuit. When I started working out of Silverstone, we had an office at the Innovation Centre. That was the only unit, apart from the units over the road at what is now Aston Martin. And there wasn't anything else there. I mean, I drive past there. I feel like every time I drive past Silverstone, there's a new unit gone up.
Yeah.
And that was Silverstone Circuit selling their land off to the pension fund, and the pension fund reimagining what a motorsport space could look like. And if you look around at those businesses, and hopefully a few of them are listening now, they're not all motorsport businesses, they're technology businesses. They are, there's electric vehicle businesses there. There's
the sports hub and
sports hub. I mean, but Silverstone as a circuit wouldn't have been able to do that. They wouldn't have been able to understand that, and they wouldn't have been able to manage it. But what selling that has been able to do, or leasing it, that space has allowed them to do, is focus on what they do. And they've done a fantastic job. And now obviously aided by the Drive to Survive push that Formula One have had. But beyond that, I think they've adapted quicker than anyone else around the world in terms of changing the way they go and put on an F1 event. So it's funny how these things come around, and you learn lessons even in the industry that we're in. Given that example of Williams or Silverstone, sometimes you rest on your laurels, or you can't see what the big vision is, because you've always done it like that, and it takes a shock, nearly going out of business for Silverstone's sake, for Williams being at the back of the grid, to re-establish what actually you're trying to achieve and how you achieve it.
Yeah, and I think, absolutely, the businesses within the Silverstone technology cluster, they have been expanding the volume of businesses on site at Silverstone, but also the cluster kind of stretches further geographically, let's say, and having that real blend of people who are high tech focused, not necessarily cars focused or not necessarily motorsports focused, but having, once business owners and their people really understand their values, that sort of anchoring and innovation of, is this working for us? Is this the best way we can do it? Can we drive it forward? Then sort of opens it almost lets the air in for that kind of innovation. Whereas if we don't know what we're trying to do, if you didn't know, don't sell advertising and it's all about the brand, then the innovation of what has now become, I don't know what your final stats were, but you said you had 20 drivers, but I imagine you had hundreds of kids, and not even kids, people gaming in their bedrooms, right?
Yeah. I mean, the year that Jann won, he beat 90,000 people, which was year 3. I think the biggest one we did, there was we did a big promotion with PlayStation, and we had our own download of the game, and over 1 million people downloaded the game to enter GT Academy. So the brilliant thing I see is of course, it changed the life of Jann Mardenbourgh, right? He's currently in LA, helped by the actors' strike. Strangely enough, he's doing a lot of the PR for this film rather than Orlando or Archie, who plays Jann. But there are a lot of other people, and that lives were changed. So winners as well. I mean, a great example is Miguel Feisca, who actually works at Aston Martin and has worked around. He works as well as an instructor at Silverstone as well on his weekends. He wouldn't have been in motorsport without GT Academy, right? And he's not a full-time racing driver now, but he is in the motorsport industry. But there's also people that come up to me, whether they were behind the camera, whether they were involved in it in a production side, whether they were involved in the motorsport side, say that was one of the best things I've ever been involved in, and it inspired me to do X, Y, Z. Or I'm now doing more motorsport stuff. I'd never done any motorsport stuff. I was a cameraman or whatever, and I'm now doing this, and so that's the proudest thing. Someone asked me the other day, "It must be mad. I mean, are you just lapping all this stuff up? There's this film coming out, and wow." And you're talking about reflection. Not really. I'm still going to work, and I'm still washing the car, and I'm still doing the laundry, and still walking the dogs. Life hasn't just stopped, and I'm just waiting for the adulation and the glory from the film. Life just goes on, and maybe in 5 years' time, I go, that was pretty cool that they made a film about it. That isn't the thing that makes me the happiest about the project. It is those people coming back to me saying, "You made a difference in my life. You changed something," and not me, the project, the team. Changed something. The friendships that people made that were involved in that project, whether they be personal friendships or business relationships. There's a lot of people that have gone on to do other things together that were involved in it. So that's the bit that I'm more than happy about. And as I called it earlier, it's a lovely exclamation mark on a great project, having a Hollywood movie out about it, until someone throws a curveball in and says, "I wonder how many people that are alive have had a Hollywood movie made about them." And then you don't want to think about that, because if you start adding up, it's not very many.
Yeah, and how many of those people are played by Orlando Bloom, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, I guess this is his first character. He's not riding around on a horse with a sword, or
on a ship,
or on a ship, hanging from the sail, with Johnny Depp. So it's a bit of a departure for him.
Yeah, I think kind of just going back slightly on what you were just saying. I think the success of the film will hang on the human story. Because I think gaming films generally have got quite a bad reputation. They don't really land very well, because actually, when you are gaming, I'm not a gamer. I'm also not even a motorsport fan, weirdly. I'm actually just a people fan. That's the thing that sort of sparks my interest. And I think that's the key thing. This is a bit of an underdog story, right, for Jann Mardenbourgh, who, was gaming in his bedroom and basically built his own, kit and simulator in his woodwork classes at school and that kind of stuff. And then through this platform, he's been given an opportunity, and because of how he's approached it, how he's been mentored, how he's worked, he's actually been incredibly successfl. And, becoming a racing driver is not necessarily available to everyone. And I think it's interesting that the gaming angle kind of leveled a playing field in a way. You didn't need a lot of money. You didn't need to be a man. You didn't need to be in a Western country. You didn't, that it really has opened the world of either cars and or then motorsport to a million people that may or may not have realized that there are jobs there, right? You can be a mechanic, and you can work on TV, and you can do marketing and all this fun stuff, and kind of how we are accessing what is quite an insular industry and quite a technical industry, through those human stories, I think is really, really interesting to kind of open up the world a bit more.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there. The impact of lockdown on motorsport as well. But it's another transformation story, really, isn't it? From Bernie Ecclestone, an 80-year-old guy who, didn't know what social media was, basically said
was very anti-social media.
Yeah. And you can unpack why he was. I've got my own theories. He was one of the first to invest in digital TV.
Yeah.
And it was the bleeding edge. It was too early. He went too early. He invested a huge amount of money. I mean, big money in it, and it didn't work. So someone had sold that to him, right? You need to be the first, Bernie. You need to be the first sport that's doing this, that's digital, that's got different angles that you can click on a red button and what. And it was too early, but brilliant, but couldn't monetize it. And so the next big thing comes out, social media. He was probably 70 at that point.
Yeah.
But the Drive to Survive thing, I mean, Drive to Survive gets the headlines. Drive to Survive is almost, for me, a bucket of Formula One has changed in the way it goes to market. And that, includes the opening up of filming in the paddock. In the Bernie era, the drivers and the teams couldn't film in the paddock. Now you see, and I get bored of the Formula One teams. Oh, here's Lando coming into the paddock. Is he wearing his hat backwards or forwards today? I mean, really? But that is the behind the scenes, that has driven the Drive to Survive thing. And so it's not just Drive to Survive; it's an attitude. It's an objective of say opening up what was a closed sport. And alongside that, going back to the gaming thing, there was an investment in esports, what's now called esports gaming, if you will.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just one thing. It was an attitude. It was an objective. It was a strategy to open up. And Drive to Survive was one of those things. And again, if you didn't start with our strategy is to open up the space, when Netflix, because I heard the story about how the deal happened, was talking to the guy at Miami Grand Prix who was instrumental in making it happen. They were literally phoning people up, rights holders. There's no way that our athletes or teams or whatever would open up and do that. And they were lucky, and Formula One were lucky that he got through to a guy called Sean Pratchett, who was then the commercial director. He had this new edict from the top, which was open up Formula One and make it more digital and make it more fan friendly. He's picked the phone up at exactly the right moment. And he's got the right guy because he's just been told by his bosses, that's what you're doing. Perfect timing. Now, if they'd have phoned up 2 years before when Bernie was there, or they'd have got through to the wrong person, or they hadn't worked out their strategy, Drive to Survive might have been delivered by, they're now doing the Golf one, the Tour de France. But
tennis.
It might have been one of those sports that benefited from it. So it is going back to that platform and having the right people with the right mindset and the right objectives in place that allows you to see those opportunities. And what I find interesting, the guy from Netflix in Miami said that what I don't want anyone to do is bring me, and he used an example, he said, Drive to Survive for women's basketball. Because he said everyone's now pitching that. Everyone's pitching the same idea. And he said, and it is something I've always thought of. If one sport or one business has a success because of something, don't just go and copy it. Don't just go and say that those guys are behind the scenes broadcast TV series. You've got to think, what is our objective? What is wrong with our business? What do we need to change? Or what is our benefit that we can translate and we can broadcast more than we are at the moment? Let's go and do that. And it isn't Drive to Survive. It can't be the same thing that helped Formula One. Formula One were lucky, but they were lucky at the right moment that the thing that they needed to do was landed on their laps, and they could see it. They could see that opportunity, and that's when you're called lucky, right? When you are able to see an opportunity that does land in your lap and not just bat it off because you don't understand it. And that is a frustration for me in business and in sport, is the copycat thing. There's something that's successful, everyone goes and does it. And the Netflix guy just perfectly summed it up for me, which was this: don't bring me women's basketball does Drive to Survive, because it's not going to work for you. Find your we want to hear about how we can make women's basketball more interesting, or crochet, or I don't know, whatever the thing that you want to promote. But don't just copy what someone else is doing, because it doesn't work. So yeah, it's been an interesting time for the business of F1 and motorsport post COVID. But obviously COVID was a real big problem for all sports. And again, Formula One made the most of it. They were the first sport back. But not only that, we had this thing which was the virtual arm of our sport that was able to carry on during COVID. So I think in general, motorsport had a good COVID.
Yeah, I think again, COVID, let's just kind of honor that it was a terrible situation for many people. There was a lot of sadness, there's a lot of pain, but actually, enforced change will always bring about something that you can find that is positive, right?
Yeah, I was listening to, it goes back to one of our earlier conversations about brand and whatever. I was listening to Simon Sinek, and I don't know if you know his work, but it starts with why is his favorite one. So you go back to brand, that would always be where I would refer to anyone that wants to start in that space. And he was talking about COVID being, yes, there was absolutely terrible things that happened and very negative things happened to businesses and people, but there's also a counter. So was that you had to lay people off? Was it because therefore you were too fat as an organization, you needed them down? Was it, as you say, that you needed to change your marketing approach or your way to market, whatever it might be? Is it that you realized that your IT systems were rubbish because you couldn't do remote working, so you updated your IT system, now you've got the best IT system in your industry? So yeah, I think it is that. And again, it's motorsport, right, that makes you do that. Yes, of course there's going to be challenges. Yes, of course someone's just crashed a car and you've got to work through the night to fix it, and that's happened a lot of times in my career. But what's the positive? And I think that's why, as you say, terrible time for everyone really, but I think that's why motorsport had a good COVID, because it's always front facing, it's always on the front foot, and worked out how it could keep the sport going, and work together as a sport. In a sport that historically doesn't work very well together, is all the individual factions. They came together very quickly. If you think about the races that were held at the Red Bull Ring as the first ones back, the closed events at Silverstone, 2 back-to-back races, that were closed, but that was amazing turnaround. Look at no other sports, were able to do that. So I think, and again with the virtual side of things, there was continuity. The race for Australia, if we're talking about Formula One, didn't happen, but the same Sunday we put on, in the business I was leading at that time, we put on a virtual race, and another business put on a race called Not the Australian Grand Prix.
Yeah,
you had other stuff going on. And by the way, the drivers supported it. We had Max Verstappen doing that race. He was involved in that race, and it was really interesting to see how all that came together in a terrible time. And I think it's just that motorsport industry, back to the wall. You've got a problem, you will fix it. You have to. The green light's going on, so off you go. And that's why. And as well, I think, and it's been forgotten actually. A lot of the Formula One teams started making stuff for the medical industry, ventilators and that sort of thing. So there was almost an inability to sit still and not do anything. They had, the motorsport industry tried to find a way of being useful.
The community of motorsport, it does definitely have, and also the like of the Silverstone technology cluster companies, there is a real community sense there, and they want to be busy, be working, be producing, and lots of them did switch into medical equipment and PPE and all of that kind of stuff to sort of contribute in some way, because, and again, I think particularly with motorsport people, they're so used to transient lifestyles that actually being at home, being locked in at home, must have had a huge mental health toll, because it's not their natural state. I know when I left Stefan, I was doing like 25 race weeks a year and I was exhausted. And then my next job was one event. I had a whole year to deliver 5 days of activity. And I thought, oh, great, this is going to be lovely. And then I realized I couldn't sit still. And so by year 2, I had 14 events. I had a load of sponsor stuff with Jaguar and Bosch and, all of that kind of stuff, because it wasn't in my nature to sit still. So I don't underestimate how active that community needed to be, and kind of pull together. Let's switch back to the film. So you've been on track filming, haven't you? You've had
I went.
the ringside seat.
Yes, I went to see the film being made at the Hungaroring. Yeah,
The actors have spoken about this. Archie's spoken about this. He's a big lad. He's apparently a 6'5".
Yeah,
not your natural racing drivers. They're
no,
very diminutive racing drivers. Like,
yes,
and he was sort of saying that it was time on the simulator. It was just learning the track, and all the driving in the film is him. But sometimes there's a little go-kart on top of the car, right?
Yeah,
Where a professional racing driver is actually driving the car.
Yes.
Outside of the car on the roof.
Yes.
I mean, who signed off the health and safety for that? Is my first question.
I think that the first thing is there are a lot of parallels between movie making and motorsport. Neil Blomkamp, the director of the film, said that basically the film industry is a logistics industry.
Yeah.
This particular film was very logistics heavy. They're moving from the Hungaroring, Nürburgring, Slovakia Ring, did a lot of traveling around Europe. The early scenes were actually filmed in Cardiff, Jann's hometown. They did scenes in Tokyo and also racing in Dubai. And it was a tight time scale in terms of the film. I think there were 4 months that they were filming, so it's been turned around very, very quickly. But even Neil said, they were prepping the movie at the Hungaroring, and while they were there, Formula One came into town for their race in Budapest, and he said he absolutely could not believe the scale of Formula One, just moving in for one weekend and moving straight back out and to go and do another race the following weekend. It's 10 times bigger than an effort than any movie he's been involved with. So I think there's a mutual respect between the two industries, and obviously we've got the situation which kicked off at Silverstone of the new movie being filmed for Formula One, and they're using Formula One races to film at, which again is another logistic challenge both for Formula One and for Hollywood. You've got to do the same thing at the same time, so I'm sure there's a lot of learnings there as well. But yeah, it was a fascinating insight. I mean, I've made some TV shows, I've made documentaries, and that sort of thing. But obviously a Hollywood movie is something different. And Neil also wanted to shoot it in a different way. As you mentioned, Archie was in the car, not necessarily driving the car, but he was at speed while he was in the car while he was being shot, or someone else might have been driving. Most of the stunt driving for him in his car, if you like, would have been Jann Mardenbourgh driving it, which is a brilliant juxtaposition of the guy that's playing the guy that's the real life guy is being doubled by the same guy.
Art imitating life, imitating art.
Exactly. Someone needs to draw that, circle of life around there somewhere. But the Neil's shooting in a very different way. I've shot car commercials, in my previous life, and as I say, done a lot of stuff making TV shows with racing cars in documentaries, etc. And if you're shooting something that isn't a real race, it's okay. You driver A is going to drive this speed past that driver. We're having a camera here and here, and then we're going to go and shoot the next scene at the next corner. And when I was there, Neil on one day said, "Right, here's the setup. I think there was 25 cars. Jann, you're at the back. You've got to get to the front within 5 laps, and we're filming. Go." And he had the fastest car, but they were filming that. So then they had zones of where the drones were. So they had 2 different teams of drone pilots. Jann said the biggest distracting thing was they were literally flying the drones through the racing line, through the cars. And if they hit the drone, they hit the drone, right? But he said it was
bird strike.
close. Exactly. But no one's done that before. And the way that it was shot, I think, from what I've seen, it's very realistic. And of course, like when I went to watch, Hunt versus Lauda, the Rush film, I would say, well, that's Brands Hatch. That's not, wherever it's supposed to be. That, that's Snetterton. That's not, whatever circuit it's supposed to be. That's not a real Formula One car. I know that because I've been told. Yes, there's the wrong cars and the wrong, okay, fine. But the way it's shot, it's as credible and as realistic as I've seen anyone do anything before. So I'm excited for the film to come out. I've got got a couple of private showings for various people that we're working with that I'm involved in. So I'll see it before tomorrow's official launch. But I'm now a passenger, and that's the interesting thing about Hollywood is someone told me right at the beginning was when it gets going, when the production gets going, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's a studio boss, you, the guy that made the game that it's filmed on, it's based on, Jann, doesn't matter. Once the Hollywood train's left the station, it's going, and no one stops
Either on or off,
and they're not going to move it offline. So yeah, pretty much the same way as a racing weekend goes, right? Once the racing weekend starts, there is a schedule. These things are going to happen unless the weather gets in the way. Those things will happen. So I can see a lot of parallels between the two things. It's been exciting to see the crossover.
Well, I'm very excited to see it. So I've got my tickets booked.
Excellent.
So I will let you know what my review of Orlando is, and see how true he is to who I know of you. So
there we go. Well, our link that we'll have, for a few years yet is we got a new cat in the house, and he's called Orlando. So
we've talked a lot, and we've kind of covered lots of different things. What stuff in all of this time that have you tolerated, that once you stopped tolerating it or you changed it, kind of made a big impact? Or if I could take something that you're tolerating away, wave a magic wand, what would that be?
I think there might. I heard two different questions in there, but
I'm giving you options to choose.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's very kind. Thing that frustrates me the most, so the thing you could take away if you could, is I've sort of tried to, I'm not sure it's the right phrase, but it sort of works for me, is people that care more about their pension than they do about their passion. And what do I mean by that? It's just people that don't do anything because it's the right thing to do for them and their career. I look at a company I used to work for, you can probably guess which one, and guys that were very average, that were below me in the career path, are now in very really senior positions. And I scratch my head and I ask people that used to be at this company, like, well, why is that? And they said, well, they never stepped out of line. They never challenged. They just did what they needed to do, just enough. And in the end, if you stick around for long enough and you're okay in what you do, and you don't rock the boat, in some of these companies, you end up at a reasonably senior
chief exec.
Maybe. And I see that, despite the fact we're in a very dynamic industry, the thing that frustrates me the most is the inability of people to make decisions quickly. And I think people miss out on huge opportunities. Now, maybe it's not their fault. Everyone's busy and they've got bosses that they've got to get things agreed with. But I just think people miss out hugely on opportunities by not making decisions quickly. And a lot of that is they're worried about what could happen if I do something wrong. So it goes back to the book, title, Fail to Win. Yeah. Sometimes you go, sod it, we're going to go and do this. And I don't think there's enough of that. I don't think there's enough conscious risk taking. I was at Nissan, I was a conscious risk taker. I thought this could work and we should try it. It wasn't unconscious, unfettered, just
bedlam.
Go and do it. It was, I knew it was a risk, but it was a conscious risk. And maybe it was really risky, but it was still conscious. It was something that, me and my management and the team around me made a decision to do. So yeah, that would be the thing, would be people that are more worried about their, keeping their pension pot than living their passion. And that's probably because I can't do that. I have to be passionate about what I do to get up in the mornings, and maybe my pension's smaller for it. But I wouldn't have lived a different life in that respect for making those decisions. Yeah.
Talking of future and dream, what's your dream car?
You said you might ask this question at the beginning, and I I had an obvious answer because it suited my commercial benefit to mention a car that I'm currently selling, which is not a dream car. It's actually a car from the film. It's a Nissan GTR GT3, which I never thought I would own something like that, but I've happened to own it, and of course, using the background of the film, we're now disposing of it, and hopefully we'll get a good price for it. But actually, I will answer it truthfully rather than that one, which isn't actually true. Just a commercial benefit to try and push that car sale with Silverstone Auctions at the classic event at the end of the summer. So look it up at Silverstone Auctions. I don't know.
So you've heard it here. If you want to get
if you
your
want
hands on,
if you want to buy a car that has been in a Hollywood movie and finished 9th at the Nürburgring in 2015, you know where to go.
You know where to go.
Yeah, dream car. I mean, it's a strange one because when I say to a non-car person, the first name that comes out of my mouth, they wouldn't understand what it is. It's a Metro. I've always wanted one, and it's a Metro 6R4. It was a bespoke car, actually engineered by Williams, funny enough, and it was a British rally car in the time when Group B, which was the heyday of rallying, in my opinion, and I was growing up. I was in the right moment, and it used to be on what was then Top Gear. They used to cover rallying rather than messing around in foreign countries and smashing old cars up. And then it went on to be a rallycross car, which I was my sport when I was growing up. I was a Formula One fan, yeah, but rallycross was my big thing, and these cars were involved and very successful. So yeah, very strange. In fact, I should look around and see if I've got a model of that somewhere. So I've got lots of model cars here, but no Metros.
And what was your first car?
Well, very closely related, actually, a Mini, which I've still got in it's Trigger's broom. It's the shell of the car. But yeah, I bought it 2 weeks before my 17th birthday, and I've now converted it into a race car. So I've owned the shell at least for however many years that is. I hate to think, over 30 years. So yeah, that was my first and probably last car, because I would very much doubt I would sell that one.
No. Well, thank you very much. It has been wonderful to get to know you a bit more, find out a bit more about the movie and how it's made, or why it was made, and where it's going. And so I'm going to end the episode there. Thank you very much, Darren. It's been great talking to you today.
Yeah, it's been great, and we talked about it in the middle, which was being reflective. I haven't had one of these chats for a while. A couple of my previous jobs, I was the front man and the face of the organisation. I'm not so much that now. So it is interesting to look back and think about things. So appreciate the opportunity to reminisce and talk nonsense about some of the stuff I've done in the past.
Super. So we're going to leave it there for today. Thanks ever so much to the listeners. Don't forget to like, review, subscribe, and get your tickets and go and see that movie. It's out tomorrow, the Gran Turismo. Thanks ever so much. Bye. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and please give us a 5-star review.
The Inside Silverstone podcast is produced by the team at Longhurst. To listen to more episodes, please visit insidesilverstone.co.uk. Please note neither Fiona or Chris work for Silverstone Park, Silverstone Technology Cluster or Silverstone Circuit.